golden opportunity fell into our lap a couple of weeks ago with Across the Spider-Verse and all the characters it gave us that people might not know a lot about.
Yes.
So last week we covered Miguel O'Hara,
did.
Spider-Man 2099, who is, by the looks of it, one of the antagonists.
Mm-hmm.
The other antagonist is actually one of my favourite obscure characters of all time. Spot. So I know Spot from the Spider-Man animated series that I grew up with and Horry watched in his 30s.
Just an absolute
and
stray.
I don't even know why, because like the show, like I said, I watched it when I was really young, so I don't remember. You know how certain certain episodes of shows when you're young
stick out.
Mm-hmm. I vividly remember the episode with Spot on it, or the couple of episodes with Spot. So when I saw that he was the villain, I was like, okay, this is gonna be really cool. But I mean, I never knew that much about him. I just remembered him. He was like a really obscure character that I saw once and never saw again. I wouldn't have been surprised if when I went to research it was like made his first appearance in that show. But let's get into it. So, Dr. Jonathan On, aka Spot, first appeared in Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man number 94. All the way back in July 1984.
Right.
So he was around for a while, but that was just as the Doctor. He made a first appearance as the Spot nearly a year later.
Right.
So Dr. On earned his doctorate at MIT, where he was roommates with one Quentin Beck, who the knowers amongst you will know that is Mysterio.
Oh, yeah.
As a scientist, he was hired by the Kingpin, another Spider-Man / New York villain, to try and study the radiation emitted by Cloak, which is another Marvel hero, to try and mimic his teleportation powers. So Cloak is a shadowy figure who looks like a cloak, and when he curls up on himself, he can teleport through his dark dimension, which he has complete control over.
Very cool.
So Kingpin hired Dr. On to try and study, recreate, and gain control over these powers. One night while working late, Owen was successful. He managed to create a portal in his lab. However, the power required to keep the portal stable caused a blackout across the city of New York. And in a moment of panic while watching this portal destabilize and begin to collapse on itself, he tried to dive at it to try and stop it, and he fell through it.
Oh, shit.
When he awoke, he assumed he was in Cloak's dark dimension until he looked around and realized it was actually half light and half darkness, with what seemed like an infinite number of portals all around him.
Okay.
So after some searching, he found the one that led back to his lab. However, after getting back to his lab, he realized his body had gone under a radical transformation, and all of these portals had adhered themselves to his body, meaning that the portals were now one with him, and he could peel them and put them back on as he saw fit. He then quickly realized that this ability, if he could harness it, could make him good enough to fight the likes of Spider-Man, Daredevil, Captain America, and all of these other thorn in his sides for his employer, and maybe it will give him a bit more recognition and respect. So when Spider-Man and the Black Cat, Felicia Hardy, arrived at Kingpin's penthouse to try and stop him, he appeared out of nowhere, declared himself the Spot, and that they were to go no further. At which point, Spider-Man fell over laughing. However, he was quickly shut up when the Spot beat him by adequately using his powers to bamboozle Spider-Man. Because of the way his portals work, if he attacks from a portal, Spider-Man's spider sense can't detect him because he's not in the universe yet. He's in a different dimension. Which, I mean, is always tricky. Spider-Man has always had a lot of difficulty dealing with villains who can avoid his spider sense.
Hmm.
Um, However, Spider-Man was later able to beat the Spot after causing him to throw so many portals off of his body that he became weakened himself and couldn't sustain them all, which made him easier to beat.
Right. Okay.
Um, Spot's a really interesting character because on paper he's a bit wacky,
Yeah.
but very unique and interesting. Um, but he's never really massively been utilized. Like I said, he got used in the animated stories for I think it was like a 3 or 4 episode arc, which was
Mhm.
really cool. And he's clearly playing a big role in some kind of multiverse stuff in Across the Spider Verse. Now, we could argue with the references in the trailer to the MCU that actually he could end up having a big impact on the MCU going forward with whatever happens due to his powers.
That's a good point.
But it's really interesting because, I mean, in both the animated series and in Across the Spider Verse trailer, he also seems a bit dim witted
Hmm.
because he's like trying to rob a bank, trying to rob like an ATM machine with his powers, and he's like putting his hand in there, and it's just falling out another part of his body because it's going through the portal. Um, so it's really interesting how they're going to portray him. I don't know if he's going to be an antagonist for that long or what, but it's definitely going to be interesting, and I think they can definitely have a lot of fun with his animation style
Yeah,
and
for
how they
sure.
can use that to really give us some cool shots.
Yeah, I think they'll really play around with that on the animation side of things. Super cool though.
It is indeed.